Hello there, I'm Zach Mayfield. I hope you're doing well in your life. Hope things are going good for you. Let's talk about the GH5 Mark II. I feel like I should preface this little chill review by saying that I was a OG GH5 owner for like 4 years. I used that camera like crazy. I shot hundreds of projects with it. A ton of my YouTube videos were shot on that camera. And it's probably the camera that I got to know the best out of any camera I've ever used. So I was pretty excited to get my hands on the Mark II and see if it was even different. And to my knowledge, I think the only real differences are you can shoot DCI 4K 60 now. In the old one, you could just do 38 by 40. Now you can do 4096, 4K 60, pretty cool. And the 4K 60 is now 10-bit internal, which is nice. So you don't have to use an external recorder to get 10-bit for all the 4K modes. So we're just gonna talk about the things I liked, and then the things that I didn't like, and then my quick thoughts at the end. First of all, I really like how this camera feels in my hands. It's just a nice feeling grip and body style. You know, some of the cameras, like even my A7S III here, feel a little too rectangular or boxy, and the GH5 just has a nice grippable body where it just sits nice and cozy. It's not too small. I feel like cameras are starting to get too small in some ways. It's nice to have like a little bit of chonk, but not too much. And of course, we can't ignore the IBIS. It was already amazing in the GH5. Panasonic's just got their IBIS dialed in. It's really good. And it's no different on the GH5 Mark II. It's still amazing. It just knows how to flow with your movements. You can basically do any kind of move you want, and the IBIS doesn't really have the weird warpy, wobbly effects that some other cameras have. So it's a very reliable tool. And I remember shooting a ton of weddings on my GH5 where I would have like a 50 to 100 lens, and I could still use IBIS with it and shoot handheld with a telephoto. And that's pretty insane. For some reason, I really like that the Micro Four Thirds mount and sensor give me the option to use a ton of different lenses. Now, my favorite way to shoot with Micro Four Thirds is with a Metabone speed booster, and my favorite trio of lenses, oh, I might have to sneeze here.
Oh, Zach, did you hit her in the head with the ball?
My favorite trio of lenses to use with the Micro Four Thirds system are not Micro Four Thirds lenses, believe it or not. It's the speed booster, the Tokina 11 to 16 2.8, the Sigma 18 to 35 1.8, and the Sigma 50 to 100 1.8. Those three lenses get you anywhere from 11 to 100 millimeters, and it's like such a beautiful combination. It's all zoomable, so if you're doing run and gun, that's three awesome lenses for your kit. And then obviously having the speed booster allows you to get more depth of field if that's the kind of look you want. You really don't need full frame like this camera to get crazy, you know, bokeh depth of field. You can get a very similar look with the GH5 II and a speed booster. It's more about the lenses than the sensor. I honestly really like how the footage looks from the GH5 Mark II. You know, put a little bit of film grain on there and some nice color grading, and it just looks really nice. I feel like Panasonic did a good job with not making the sensor look too digital. Now, obviously, you can like fully customize your image and get rid of some of that sharpness from digital sensors and stuff, but the GH5 II sensor, it's looking good. And I think I just gotta say it, it's my favorite Lumix camera that I've used so far. Now, I haven't really used a ton of the other Lumix cameras like the S1 and the S1H, but I have used the S5, and I know my friend JP is gonna watch this. And I'm not just trying to meme on you, but I like the GH5 Mark II better than the S5. There, I said it. Don't cancel me. I think it's just a combination of the different lenses you can use on this smaller mount and how it looks and how the body feels. It's just a great combo. Maybe I'm just a nostalgic boy and I'm thinking back to my old GH5 days, but there's something about that speed booster Sigma combo with this camera that just, it feels good. Feels good, looks good. That's my thoughts. Now let's talk about the bad, or the things I didn't like. First one, and probably most obvious to all of us, is the autofocus is poop. You know, it's not great, but I feel like a lot of people won't be getting the GH5 or the GH5 II for a YouTube camera. And I think that's why a lot of us like good autofocus for video, is when we're doing these kinds of shots where we gotta film ourselves and, you know, pretend that we're cool on the internet. But if you just ignore the autofocus and you're doing like a ton of client work and you like to pull your own focus, This camera is amazing. It's such a good client camera because it's very inexpensive. It's super reliable. There's like no overheating issues with the GH5 or the GH5 II, but there are a couple of areas that it does struggle in. One is dynamic range. I noticed going from my A7S III where I can like recover a ton of information from the highlights to the GH5 II where there's a very obvious clipping point where the camera's just like, yeah, I don't have dynamic range there, sorry buddy. But that doesn't mean that the image looks bad by any means. You can kind of soften out that clipping point by adding a pro mist to your lens to kind of bloom the highlights a little bit to hide that clipping look. Or you can do a slight roll off curve in your editor for color grading and kind of smoothen out those highlights and not make it such a drastic clip. And unfortunately, the GH5 II is still not great in low light. I was basically hoping for all of the GH5's function, but the GH5S's sensor, which was way better in low light and had dual native ISO, I believe, it's still kind of rough in low light. I was shooting some stuff at 2500 to 3200 ISO, and there was still natural light coming in from the window. It wasn't like I'm just out shooting in a dark street. And even when my exposure was correct and there was a little bit of natural light, there's still just quite a bit of noise, and it wasn't super fine like some modern cameras. It was pretty noticeable, and it had like that color noise too. So if you're looking for a low light performing camera, this is probably not the one. But if you're using light in your scenes or you're able to shoot at native ISO for most of your stuff, then this is still an awesome option. And now we're just gonna spend a little bit of time on my thoughts and who's this camera for. I gotta say, my very first thought when using this camera is, honestly, it makes me miss my friend Daniel Peacock a whole bunch. I don't know if any of you guys followed him on YouTube, but me and him bonded over the GH5 years ago, and we met in the YouTube comments talking about that camera, and we got to meet up in person, and sadly, he passed away this past year, and I miss my buddy Daniel, so rest in peace, brother. The GH5 is what brought us together, and that's why cameras are cool. It's not the cameras, it's the people who use them and meet each other. I am a fan of this Mark II version of the GH5, but I'm not a fan of camera companies doing these really tiny incremental updates like iPhones. With an iPhone, you can kind of buy one and wait like 4 years before you need to upgrade, or even longer. And I feel like that should be the same for cameras in general. Use the camera you have, get super good with it, because buying the newest camera isn't gonna make you better with the cameras. You gotta spend some time with it. It's like a relationship. You gotta learn its strengths, its weaknesses, and how to fulfill those into creating good projects. So it's a little disappointing that Panasonic just added a couple new things and wants a couple grand from you. So if you already have the GH5, I don't think I would upgrade to the GH5 Mark II. If anything, I would hold out and see what's gonna happen with the GH6. So if you're like a Panasonic fan, or you just really like Lumix cameras, or let's say you're invested in the Micro Four Thirds lenses, or you like the Speed Booster and EF lens combo, I would just kind of hold out and see how much the GH6 is gonna be and what it has to offer. Maybe I'm holding out for hope. Maybe Panasonic will add some good autofocus in or something. I don't know. I kind of doubt it, but who knows? I would just kind of wait this one out. But now let's say you're looking for like your first pro camera and the GH5 Mark II's price point is like your absolute max you can spend. Well, then you don't really need to worry about getting the GH6. You could just get the GH5 Mark II, and trust me, you're gonna have an amazing camera on your hands. You can spend a few years with it and get really good with it and get great results. It's a total workhorse camera that's just gonna perform. It's gonna be extremely reliable, and once you learn how to work within its limitations, I think you'll be pleased with the options it gives you, as long as you don't need autofocus or low light. Thank you for watching my internet video projects. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna dedicate this one to my friend Daniel Peacock because he's awesome, and his GH5 footage will always be better than my GH5 footage. I love that dude. Go check out his channel. He has a lot of cool stuff backlogged, a lot of really beautiful images on his channel, and I think it would mean a lot if you went and just watched a couple of his videos or something. All right, I love you. Text me when you get home because I need to know that you're safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.